Hey everyone, and welcome to the 5 Bytes Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monahan. The podcast, as always, is brought to you by my sponsors. That includes Numescent, the inventors of the first and only cloud-native container management platform for Windows desktops. And also brought to you by Master Packager, an application packaging software that helps you build packages that end users love, enterprises want, and the Windows OS needs. If you enjoy the show each week, you have these awesome sponsors to thank. And now for some news. Windows 10 end of support has now passed. Long live Windows 10. Now, I've been covering it for quite some time, and I've also covered stories about how people can avail of getting some free extended security updates for Windows 10. And maybe I'll share a blog post with this episode if you'd like to read more on that. And you can find that at 5bytespodcast.com under episode 409. But, I'm not going to labor that point. I've covered it quite extensively already. But what has been getting maybe less attention is the fact that Windows 11 22H2 editions are also end of support, and Home and Pro editions of Windows 11 23H2 are going to stop receiving security updates from November 11th. So it's all go. If you're off Windows 10, don't rest on your laurels, particularly if you're using the Home and Pro editions. You'll want to get past 23H2. And it's a timely reminder that a lot of industries are mostly still running Windows 10. So it is squeaky bum time. And I'll share a link to ControlUp survey showing a breakdown of the different industries out there and kind of what percentage are on Windows 10 versus Windows 11 from their data set. It is quite eye-opening, and I guess not all that surprising because there just doesn't seem to have been too much of an appetite or an urgency for enterprises to get to Windows 11, which is odd because now it's time to pay the piper. In another timely announcement, Microsoft has announced the general availability of Windows Backup for Organizations, a new enterprise-grade backup tool that helps simplify backups and makes the transition to Windows 11 easier. Once toggled on, the tool can back up Windows settings, preferences, and Microsoft Store installed apps on Windows 10 and Windows 11 systems, and then help you restore them onto your Windows 11 PCs during device setup. So it seems a little odd that I guess it's coming so late in the day for this, but welcome nonetheless. And the backup tool has been available on the Windows 11 consumer side for a little while at least. So obviously this is one of the avenues for consumer users to be able to get free Windows 10 ESUs for a year is by using the backup tool. But this is an announcement for the Windows backup feature for enterprises, which does not buy you into Windows 10 ESU for a year. But still, it should be welcome to those who are maybe still working on their Windows 11 migrations or haven't started for some reason. Of course, because this week was the end of Windows 10 support, Windows 10 just received its last batch of Windows updates on Tuesday. The total rundown of vulnerabilities patched in this month's Patch Tuesday across Windows operating systems includes 80 elevation privilege vulnerabilities being patched, 11 security feature bypass vulnerabilities, 31 remote code execution vulnerabilities, 20 information disclosure vulnerabilities, 11 denial of service vulnerabilities, and 10 spoofing vulnerabilities. And alone the 80 elevation and privilege vulnerabilities is quite sizable, as well as the 31 remote code execution vulnerabilities that have been patched. But, add everything together, this is a remarkable 172 vulnerabilities that have been patched this month, and that includes 6 zero-day vulnerabilities. So this is quite a large month, and I would think, just going off of previous months where the number of vulnerabilities being patched has been high, that could increase the likelihood of issues and fallout caused by these Windows updates. Now, I'm not going to cover all of the highlights, I guess. Usually I'd at least cover some of the zero-day vulnerabilities patched, but 6, I don't want it to be too long of an episode, so I'll just highlight maybe 3 that I thought were of particular interest. First up, CVE-2025-24990. This is a Windows Agar modem driver elevation of privilege vulnerability. And there isn't a whole lot of detail around this one, other than the patch appears to be removing this modem driver that has been abused to gain administrative privileges. So they're taking the step here with the patch to just completely remove this driver, which I thought was interesting. There was also CVE-2025-59230, and this is a Windows Remote Access Connection Manager elevation of privilege vulnerability. And as you might expect, through this vulnerability, cyber gangs would be able to leverage Windows Remote Access Connection Manager in order to gain system privileges. Finally, at least for the ones that I'm going to cover this week, CVE-2025-47827. This one is a secure boot bypass in IGIL OS versions before 11. They stated in the advisory, quote, in IGIL OS before 11, secure boot can be bypassed because the IGIL flash driver module improperly verifies a cryptographic signature. Ultimately, a crafted root file system can be mounted from an unverified squashfs image, end quote. MITRE created this CVE on IGIL's behalf, and this month's Windows Updates incorporates updates in IGIL OS, which addresses the vulnerability. This one does have a lot of detail, and the researcher who discovered this, Zach Didcott, has shared a write-up on the vulnerability if you'd like to read more, and I'll share a link to that with this episode. That'll be with the bleepycomputer.com article, and you can find that at 5bytespodcast.com under episode 409. And of course, just like every month, other vendors have also released their own security updates in line with Patch Tuesday, such as the likes of Apple, Cisco, Adobe, and more. BleepyComputer.com reported that Microsoft says the latest version of Windows 11 Media Creation Tool no longer works correctly on Windows 10 22H2 machines. On the help dashboard, it said, quote, the Windows 11 Media Creation Tool version 26100.6584 that was released on September 29th might not work as expected when used on Windows 10 devices. The Media Creation Tool might close unexpectedly, displaying no error message. Microsoft have said that they're working on a resolution for the issue, and it'll be released in a future update to the Windows 11 Media Creation Tool. As a workaround, Microsoft advised users to download a disk image or ISO for x64 devices directly from the Microsoft site. TechCrunch.com has reported that Google has announced a new feature that will automatically disable browser notifications for websites that you have not interacted with recently, disrupting their ability to pop-up alert and show updates that you may no longer be interested in since you haven't been active in the tab. The feature will launch on Chrome, on Android, and on desktops. Google says it will inform users when it's removing notification permissions, allowing users to change the setting back if they wish. And if users would rather Google did not intervene, they can also just opt to turn off this feature altogether. I think that's pretty nice. Cuts down on nuisance notifications. Good move, Google. NeoWin.net reported that Google is also releasing a button that allows you to hide sponsored search results with a single click. However, this button is placed below all sponsored search results, which means that technically you're still going to see them in order to actually get to the button to hide the results. There doesn't seem to be a way yet to apply this change globally either, so you'll need to do it each time. But I guess it's at least a way for you to clear those sponsored results ad hoc or point in time. Maybe not as impressive of a feature as the notification disabling feature, but hey, still, I mean, it's interesting nonetheless. BleepyComputer.com reported that Microsoft is restricting access to Internet Explorer mode in Edge browsers after learning that hackers have been leveraging a zero-day exploit in the Chakra JavaScript engine to access and target devices. Unfortunately, there are not many details disclosed for this one, but the new restrictions aim at making the activation of IE mode an intentional user action, so I guess it can't be done in stealth mode by a cyber gang. Furthermore, the list of websites approved to load in IE mode should make it very difficult for attackers to succeed in their compromise attempts. These changes do not apply to commercial users who will continue to use IE mode as configured through enterprise policies, so it's more of a protection are a concern on the consumer side. There were reports that some customers experienced issues earlier this week, preventing them access to Microsoft 365 applications. And Microsoft later confirmed the issue, confirming that some users may have been unable to access their applications, and that the impact was specific to some users who are served through affected infrastructure attempting to access the apps. Unfortunately, at the time, Microsoft did not disclose, what were the qualifying or mitigating factors, I guess, to the issue. Was it specific regions or what have you? And it took over 4 hours for the issue to be eradicated, with Microsoft confirming that they had mitigated the issue, but at the time, at least, they were still working on confirming a root cause. In an update to a previously reported story on this podcast, it was reported by bleepingcomputer.com that the Quinlan ransomware group has claimed responsibility for the attack on Japanese beer giant Asahi by adding the company to their list of victims on their data leak site. The threat actor claims to have exfiltrated more than 9,300 files in 27 gigs of data. And as proof of their theft, the hackers published 29 images showing internal financial documents, employee IDs, as well as confidential contracts and internal reports. The gang claims that the attack will cause the company to lose up to $330 billion due to production disruptions at 6 breweries, impacting 30 labels. And I believe it was on last week's episode that I confirmed that operations had continued at the respective breweries, but that shipping was more of a manual process, so there could be potential delays still. So yeah, just another example of the devastation that these cyber attacks can cause, and unfortunately, it looks like at least sensitive employee IDs and documentation has been breached by this gang. In another follow-up story, the UK Metropolitan Police have arrested 2 suspects following an investigation into the doxing of children online after a ransomware attack on a chain of London-based nurseries called Kiddo. The 17-year-old suspects were taken into custody at their homes in Bishop Stratford, Hertfordshire, on suspicion of blackmail and computer misuse. While the Met did not share more details on the cyber attack, the details do align with the story that I covered last week on this apparently new cyber gang, and that had basically been schooled by other cyber gangs on proper etiquette and not attacking children or exposing children in this way. So they had to somewhat lament, and they removed the sensitive data online, and then they got a bit of a kudos and, hey, we're looking forward to working with you in the future. So it seems like suspicions may be confirmed that these are just rookies, and that's why they didn't fall in line and why they showed bad practice or ethics, I guess. But regardless, it seems like some of the people suspected have been arrested. BleepingComputer.com has reported that Harvard University is investigating a data breach after the Clop ransomware gang listed the school on its data leak site, saying the alleged breach was likely caused by a recently disclosed zero-day vulnerability in Oracle's e-business suite servers. The Clop gang added Harvard to the data leak extortion site, stating that it would soon publicly release the university's data. While Clop would not share details about the attack, they confirmed to BleepingComputer.com that they were behind the emails and that a new Oracle flaw was exploited in the data theft attacks. So watch this space on that one, I guess. The Docker team has announced unlimited access to its Hardened images catalog to make access to secure software bundles affordable for all development teams at startups and SMBs. These images are verified as being free of known vulnerabilities at the time that you access them, so it is a leg up for those using these in terms of security. Salesforce says that it's refusing to pay an extortion demand made by a crime syndicate that claims to have stolen roughly 1 billion records from dozens of Salesforce customers. Many Salesforce customers have unfortunately been impacted by breaches related to this Salesforce breach, and now it looks like they've confirmed that someone's trying to shake them down for money. Now, it seems like the intention by Salesforce is that they're not going to pay the ransom, which would be recommended best practice in this situation. But obviously, it's not going to change the fact that this was a breach that basically had tentacles and has affected other Salesforce customers too, which is very unfortunate. Copilot version 1.25095.161 is now rolling out to Windows insiders across all channels via the Microsoft Store, according to neowin.net. And after updating the app, you can ask Copilot something about your PC and its settings. For example, you can say, "The screen is too dim," and in return, Copilot will show you a direct link to the display settings. Now, it's important to note that it will only show you where to start and what to do for yourself. It's not going to change those settings. However, if you have a Copilot Plus PC, Windows 11 has a so-called settings agent, according to NeoWin, which can adjust settings on your behalf. So if you want, I guess, the richer experience of actually being able to do something with this, you'd want the Copilot Plus PCs. TechCrunch.com has reported that California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a landmark bill that regulates AI companion chatbots, making it the first state in the U.S. to require AI chatbot operators to implement safety protocols for AI companions. The law, which is SB 243, is reportedly designed to protect children and vulnerable users from some of the harms associated with AI companion chatbot use. It holds companies, from the likes of Meta and OpenAI to more focused companion startups like Character AI and Replica, legally accountable if their chatbots fail to meet the law's standards. SB 243 will go into effect from January 1st of next year and requires companies to implement certain features such as age verification and warnings regarding social media and companion chatbots. The law also implements stronger penalties for those who profit from illegal deepfakes, including up to $250,000 per offense fines. Companies must also establish protocols to address suicide and self-harm, which will be shared with the state's Department of Public Health alongside statistics on how the service provided users with crisis center prevention notifications. Per the bill's language, platforms must also make it clear that any interactions are artificially generated and chatbots must not represent themselves as healthcare professionals. Companies are required to offer break reminders to minors and prevent them from viewing sexually explicit images generated by the chatbot. Some companies have already begun to implement some safeguards aimed at children. So, for example, OpenAI has recently begun rolling out their parental controls, content protections, and a self-harm detection system for children who use ChatGPT. Replica, which is designed for adults over the age of 18, told TechCrunch.com that it dedicates significant resources to safety through content filtering systems and guardrails that direct users to trusted crisis resources, and it's committed to complying with the current regulations. I suppose the good thing about this is it does at least give until January 1st for these companies to implement these features and protections in a meaningful way. So there can be no excuse from January 1st if they do it in a half-arsed way, in my opinion. Other states in the U.S., like Illinois, Nevada, and Utah, have passed laws to restrict or fully ban the use of AI chatbots as a substitute for licensed mental health care. So there is a bit of a precedence here for some AI regulation at the state level, and I'm sure there's going to be even more in the future as these services expand their use cases. And finally, on the news for this week, last Wednesday, the Bank of England warned that global financial markets could face a sharp correction if investor sentiment turns negative on AI. The UK central bank said US stock valuations resemble those seen near the peak of the dot-com bubble on some measures, with AI-focused companies making up an unprecedented amount of market value. In its quarterly report, derived from a meeting of its Financial Policy Committee that took place last week, Bank of England wrote, quote, "The risk of a sharp market correction has increased," end quote. Reuters notes that it's the Bank of England's strongest warning to date about potential AI-driven market declines. The committee, chaired by Governor Andrew Bailey, said spillover risks to Britain's financial system from such a shock were material. The warning comes as the S&P 500 hit a record high recently, up 14% year to date. The Bank of England noted in its report that 30% of S&P 500's valuation comes from just 5 companies at the top, which is the most concentrated the index has been in 50 years. These companies include Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and Meta, all of which have invested substantially in AI development. Share valuations based on past earnings have also reached their highest levels since the dot-com bubble 25 years ago, though the Bank of England noted they appear less extreme when based on investors' expectations for future profits, saying, quote, "This, when combined with increasing concentration within market indices, leaves equity markets particularly exposed should expectations around the impact of AI become less optimistic." End quote. So, I mean, it's been said for a long time now that AI seems to be a bubble, seems to be a bubble, seems to be a bubble. And I don't know, personally, even with like Sora 2 getting a lot of like, oh, wow, this is incredible. I think James Cameron, the director, had said that AI is going to take over the movie business in a few years. Personally, I see the likes of Sora 2 and its infiltration just on like social media apps like TikTok and Instagram hurting those businesses. Because if I'm just seeing AI slop constantly, I'm less likely to engage. I'm like, why waste my time? It's going to be very interesting, in my opinion, to see how the value of human creation versus AI creation unfolds in the coming months and years. But now, this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. Well, figured I'd be topical on the tip this week. I saw WindowsCentral.com shared a how to use Windows 10 ESUs to keep getting updates after October 2025. Likewise, I had a blog post covering some of the ways you can get free ESUs, but there's also in this article some steps on how to like register and the actual process of signing up. So it may be useful to use both articles that I'll share with this episode. That's all I wanted to cover because I've got a bit of a lingering cough. I guess I'd also add it was great to see so many familiar faces and friends at App Manage event last week in Utrecht. It was a pretty great event. It seemed like there was a noticeable uptick in attendance this year versus maybe the last couple of years too. So that's very cool to see the event thriving. And they already announced that App Manage event in 2026 is going ahead, and it's also going to be in October. So be sure to, I guess, listen to this podcast because I'm sure I'll promote it, but keep a lookout for the early bird so you can go to App Manage event next year. It is a really awesome event. But that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening.